Today at Robert's Guitar Dungeon, I'm going to teach you how to play guitar like James Hetfield. This video was actually my wife's idea, and she has wanted me to do a video about how to play guitar like somebody. She didn't necessarily mention James Hetfield, but I certainly did because he's my favorite guitar player. And because I just saw him if you saw my Metallica live video last week, you will know that I got to see Papa Het from the front row of Metallica's Hardwired tour, the stop here in Indianapolis, just about a week or so ago. And time of my life, and I still can't stop smiling about it because it was such a great time. But I thought that, because there has been no other influence, that there's been no bigger influence on my own guitar playing than Mr. James Hetfield, that I would, my wife thought that I would do a video discussing some of the techniques that I learned from Papa Het himself. There are lots of things about James Hetfield that make him a great guitar player, but one of the things I think that makes him a uniquely great guitar player is the fact that he's primarily a rhythm player, but to be able to sing the complex vocals that he sings and play rhythm guitar, very complex rhythm, progressive, thrash metal, as well as he does. There's a certain level of talent there that I'm quite sure I will never achieve. But I have learned a thing or two from one Mr. James Hetfield. But when I think of James Hetfield as a guitar player, probably the first thing that I always think of, that he is really, really well known for is his downpicking. And he downpicks just about everything. He's got a very, very fast, very accurate, very articulate right hand. And if you really want to learn to play like James Hetfield, that's probably the first thing that you are going to want to develop. That's the primary thing that you're going to want to develop. All down picking, as well as something like that, But the point is, James, down picks whenever humanly possible. And like that Master of Puppets riff, both the intro, which I can't really play it, but. All down picking, and you're probably going to start to feel, your forearm and a little bit in your upper arm start to tighten up from practicing that, So, which by the way, if you ever see him live, in James Hetfield's younger days, like early '90s, like when they were touring behind the Black Album, and he was out there on stage without his shirt off. I mean, he was ripped. And part of the reason why is because he can, his right hand is so ridiculously fast. Seriously, I remember seeing him back in the 90s, and, he just looked like a Nordic god out there on stage with this huge lightning bolt slung over his shoulder. The lightning bolt, of course, being the guitar, but, and I didn't realize how much skill and how much work he had to have put into that. But regardless, that's how he plays it. And the reason why he does that is because the tone of a continuous downstroke is a lot more consistent. And, there's verses, let me give you an example of what an alternate pick would sound like. That's a downstroke. So you can hear there is a little bit of a difference between the two, and I think James must have either learned to do it that way, just because I don't know why. I don't know why or how he learned to do it that way, but for whatever reason he did. So down picking whenever and wherever possible. Something else that James Hetfield likes to do is, he always, whenever he plays an E power chord, or even a muted one, James always likes to seem to add in, and he's changed this up a little bit over the years. I'll get to that in a minute. But James always likes to add in that muted A string wherever that power chord is. Really for any power chord. He doesn't like to throw in a muted single note in between, like for, For Whom the Bell Tolls, for example. That's how I've always played it. James Hetfield, on the other hand, last few videos and stuff I've seen of him playing it live, that's all power chords. So, for whatever reason, he just really, really likes to do it that way, and he doesn't mind jumping back to that, that open E two-note power chord, whereas, for me, it was always easier just to, play that open E muted by itself. And, of course, if you're using enough gain, it's kind of tough to tell the difference anyway, for me, to my ear. But, James prefers perfection. He did, I know for whatever reason, when he was younger, he did used to play it the way that I play it, but the last 10 years or so, every video that I've seen of him playing it, he's now jumping back and, playing it, full power chords, throughout the entire riff. James's way. My way. James's way is definitely a little bbit fuller sounding throughout the entire riff. So, something else that I noticed when I was seeing him last week is, the kind of the main riff in Master of Puppets. There's all power chords. Now, Kirk Hammett was still continuing to play power chords sliding all over the neck, and that's a fast riff, and you can get hung up in the wrong spot pretty easily, or at least I can. So, now, in a live situation, I was when I saw him playing it that way, I started listening as closely as I could, and I couldn't tell the difference in a live situation in a huge arena with 20,000 people in it. So I'm going to assume that he probably started doing it that way, specifically for ease of performance, as he also has to concentrate on singing vocals, and that Master Puppets is one of Metallica's tougher vocals. So he's got more than one thing to do while he's out there. He may have simplified it for himself and allowed Kirk continuing to play power chords, as I mentioned, play that riff the old-fashioned way, to fill in the sonic gaps, if you will, and sounded great. So the other thing is Kurt they have both changed their guitar tones quite a bit. James has really, really worked on they both turned up the mids quite a bit, for a little bit more modern sound compared to what they were doing back in the 80s, which also may have had something to do with it. Third and final thing that James Hetfield is known for is he is an excellent tremolo picker. And if you're not familiar with what tremolo picking is when you do something like that. For example, the kind of the bridge portion of Fade to Black. I use that as an example because that's probably my all-time favorite Metallica song. But there's tons and tons of places throughout Metallica's entire catalog where, he has done some monster tremolo picking. But there are none throughout the entire catalog more famous than the song One. And then that goes on for about another 4 or 5 minutes or so, with all kinds of other crazy tremolo picking stuff. But James made that technique famous, really probably with that song more than any other, because that song sounded, when they did it in that song, for as long as they did it there towards the end, it sounded like a machine gun. And, that's basically how all the critics were describing it. To go along with with one of the darker music videos ever filmed, to go along with it, really it was absolutely genius. So there you have it. Hopefully you have learned a few things in this video about how to play more like James Hetfield. Some of these techniques can be a little bit more difficult than others. I am obviously not perfect at many of them. For me, it is always a work in progress, but I believe in you, and I believe that if you keep practicing at it, you too can become a great, great, great guitar player, just like James Hetfield. Unfortunately, for all of us, no matter how great of a rhythm guitar player we may be able to become, none of us will ever be as cool as James Hetfield. And even if we are as cool as James Hetfield, none of us will ever be as cool as James Hetfield playing guitar to his garden gnomes, James Hetfield. Just a reality. As I have been on a pretty serious Metallica kick here on my channel lately. This is the third video that I have done here in the last month that has a Metallica theme around it. Hopefully, maybe this one, unlike the first two, will not get hammered by the copyright police. So, fingers crossed. Links down in the description. Please leave a comment down below and let me know if you have any other tips on how to play more like James Hetfield. Last but not least, please consider hitting the subscribe button to this channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to hit the little bell icon right next to it. That way you make sure that you don't miss out on future content of this channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.